Be me, Marcus, 32. I work as a financial analyst for a regional insurance company. Not exciting, not glamorous, but stable. I spend most of my day looking at risk models, client portfolios, and spreadsheets that punish emotional thinking immediately. If the numbers do not work, they do not work. You can argue with them, you can dislike them, you can call them unfair. They remain exactly what they are. That kind of clarity has always appealed to me. For a long time, clarity was the one thing missing from my relationship with Claire. Claire and I had been together for almost 4 years. When we met, she was sharp, funny, and genuinely magnetic. She had this confident way of moving through the world that made you want to keep up with her. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone feel like the conversation had just gotten more interesting. In the beginning, I admired that. I still do in a way. Back then, she made me feel seen. She asked real questions. She remembered things. She would send me little messages during the day just because she thought something would make me laugh. We had a good rhythm. I had my work. She had her marketing job. We saw friends. We cooked dinner. We argued sometimes like normal people. Then we made up like normal people. For the first year, I thought we were building something solid. By year 2, the language started changing, not suddenly, slowly, like a new software update installing in the background without asking permission. Claire got very deep into online dating discourse, not just casual advice, the intense kind, the kind where every relationship is analyzed like a power struggle, and every man is assumed to be negotiating in bad faith. She started talking about standards, minimum standards, non-negotiables, provider energy, emotional leadership, masculine initiative, bare minimum behavior. At first, I did not object. I actually agreed with some of it. People should have standards. Nobody should stay in a relationship where they are neglected. Effort matters. Consistency matters. I believed all of that. The problem was that her standards did not stay standards. They became a scoreboard. And somehow I was always losing. It started with little comments. If I planned dinner, she would say it was nice, but that planning one dinner did not make me exceptional. If I cleaned the apartment, she would remind me that men do not deserve applause for basic adulthood. If I bought flowers, she would say flowers were nice, but emotional consistency mattered more than gifts. If I asked what emotional consistency meant in that exact moment, she would say she was tired of educating me. There was no winning. Doing something counted as bare minimum. Not doing it counted as failure. Questioning the criteria counted as emotional immaturity. I began to feel like I was being graded by a teacher who refused to hand out the syllabus. Claire's friends made it worse. They were not bad people exactly, but they spoke about relationships like a committee drafting labor regulations. Every brunch became a tribunal. One friend, Jenna, had recently broken up with a guy because he did not plan a sufficiently thoughtful birthday weekend. Another, Margot, said men should be required to prove value before getting access to feminine peace. Claire would nod along with this serious expression. Then she would glance at me, not affectionately, evaluatively, like she was checking whether I understood that I was on probation. One Saturday, we were at brunch with them. I paid for both of us because I usually did. The server walked away with my card. Jenna looked at Claire and said, "See, that is nice, but paying is not enough anymore." Claire nodded. She said, "Exactly, the bar is in hell." I remember looking down at the receipt. I had just paid for brunch for 4 people because Jenna forgot her wallet and Margot's card declined. Apparently, even that was not enough to raise the bar out of hell. I did not say anything. I just signed the receipt. That became the pattern. I would do something useful, thoughtful, or generous. Claire would acknowledge it briefly, then she would explain why it did not really count. If I planned a date, I should have planned it earlier. If I booked a weekend trip, I should have checked whether the hotel had a better spa. If I remembered her presentation day and sent encouragement, I should have also sent lunch. If I fixed her car appointment, I should not expect gratitude because logistical labor is something women do all the time. At some point, appreciation disappeared from the relationship and was replaced by compliance review. I did not notice how bad it had gotten until the list appeared. It was a Tuesday night. I came over to her apartment after work. She had invited me for what she called a relationship alignment conversation. That phrase alone should have made me turn around. She had tea on the table, her laptop was open, a notebook sat beside it. She looked prepared, very prepared. I sat down across from her. She took a breath and said she had been doing a lot of reflecting. I had learned to hate that sentence. She said she loved me, but she needed to be honest about the gaps in our relationship. She said she was entering a stage of life where she could no longer accept low-effort partnership. I asked if she thought I was low effort. She gave me that disappointed look, the one that said the question itself was proof of the problem. Then she turned her laptop toward me. There it was, a document titled Minimum Standards for a Serious Partner. There were categories: financial responsibility, emotional intelligence, romantic initiative, domestic contribution, social awareness, feminist allyship, long-term leadership. Each category had bullet points, lots of bullet points. I remember staring at the screen and feeling strangely calm. Not because it was reasonable, because it was so absurdly detailed that my brain treated it like a client report. She had built a performance dashboard for being her boyfriend. Under financial responsibility, it said a serious partner should be financially stable, generous without resentment, proactive about shared expenses, and willing to invest in experiences. Under romantic initiative, it said he should plan at least 2 intentional dates per month, remember meaningful milestones, offer spontaneous gestures, and never need to be prompted. Under emotional intelligence, it said he should initiate difficult conversations, validate without defensiveness, anticipate emotional needs, and create a safe space for feminine vulnerability. Under domestic contribution, it said he should notice tasks before being asked, take ownership, and understand that helping is not the same as leading. Under feminist allyship, it said he should actively challenge male privilege, consume feminist content, and hold other men accountable. There were 37 items total. I know because I counted. Claire watched my face carefully. I asked if this was a discussion or a policy. She said it was a boundary. Of course it was. Everything was a boundary now. I asked whether she had a similar list of standards for herself. She blinked. Then she said women already carry the burden of relationships, and that asking for reciprocity in that way was missing the point. I asked if any of the standards applied both ways. She said I was getting defensive. I asked how progress would be measured. She said I should not need a gold star for meeting the minimum. I looked back at the screen. 37 minimums. No scoring system, no reciprocal obligations, no acknowledgement for completion, only failure if anything was missed. It was not a relationship standard. It was an unpaid job description. She said she wanted me to take the list seriously. She said a man who truly loved her would rise to meet her standards. She said she was not going to mother a grown man into becoming partner material. I asked what happened if I did meet the standards. She smiled a little. She said then she would feel safer moving forward. Not happier, not grateful, not loved. Safer moving forward. The reward for passing the exam was permission to take the next exam. I should have walked away that night. I did not. Instead, I did what I always do. I made a copy of the list. I turned it into a spreadsheet. 37 rows, category, requirement, action needed, status, cost, time, notes. It sounds insane when I say it now, but at the time I thought maybe clarity would help. If she wanted standards, I would define them. If she wanted effort, I would document it. If she wanted initiative, I would show it. For the next 6 weeks, I tried to meet the list, completely. Methodically, I scheduled 2 intentional dates per month. Actually, I scheduled 3. I booked restaurants. I planned a museum visit because she had once mentioned wanting to go. I bought tickets to a jazz night because she said we never did cultured things. I set reminders for important work events. I sent flowers after a difficult client presentation. I deep cleaned my apartment before she came over. I stocked her favorite tea. I read the articles she sent. I watched the video essay about emotional labor. I listened to the podcast about men weaponizing incompetence. I even went to a dinner with her friends and challenged one of my own friends later when he made a lazy joke about his wife. I was not perfect, nobody is. But I was trying harder than I had ever tried in any relationship. And the strange thing was I was actually good at the tasks. Planning is not hard for me, budgeting is not hard, scheduling is not hard, noticing patterns is literally my job. Once I had a defined list, I could execute. The problem was that execution did not produce appreciation. It produced updated expectations. After the museum date, Claire said it was nice but felt a little curated. After the jazz night, she said she wished I had chosen something more intimate. After the flowers, she said gifts were not a substitute for emotional depth. After I cleaned my apartment, she said men should not expect praise for hygiene. After I watched the podcast, she asked if I had really reflected on it or just consumed it passively. Every completed item became evidence that I should have been doing it all along. Nothing counted as effort. Everything counted as overdue compliance. One night I opened the spreadsheet and looked at the notes column, date planned, no appreciation, flower sent, reframed as insufficient, article read, follow-up criticism, dinner paid, called bare minimum, apartment cleaned, no acknowledgement, friend challenged, question sincerity. I stared at the screen for a long time. The spreadsheet was starting to look less like a plan and more like a diagnosis. Still, I kept trying. That was my mistake. I thought consistency would eventually prove something. I thought if I met enough standards, she would soften. Instead, she moved the line. About 2 months after the list was introduced, she added a new category, future orientation. Apparently, I was not demonstrating enough long-term leadership. I asked what that meant. She said she wanted to feel like I had a vision for us. I said I had been saving for a house down payment. She said money was not vision. I said I had talked about marriage before. She said talking was not leadership. I asked what leadership would look like. She said if she had to explain it, that defeated the purpose. I remember actually laughing, not loudly, just one short breath. She looked offended. I apologized automatically. Then I hated myself for apologizing. That night, I met my older sister, Natalie, for dinner. Natalie is a lawyer. She has the kind of calm that makes people confess things by accident. She asked how Claire was. I said we were working through some standards. Natalie asked what that meant. I showed her the list. She read it in silence. Her eyebrows went up around item 12 and stayed there. When she finished, she handed my phone back and said, "Marcus, this is not a relationship. This is a procurement document." I said Claire just wanted effort. Natalie said, "No, she wants authority without accountability." I did not answer. She continued, "Look at this. She defines the job, evaluates the work, changes the requirements, and gives herself no deliverables." I hated how cleanly she said it, because once she said it, I could not unsee it. Then Natalie asked one question that stuck with me. What would happen if you gave this level of effort to someone who actually appreciated it? I did not have an answer, because I had not allowed myself to imagine that. A few weeks later, Claire and I had the conversation that ended us even though we did not know it yet. It was after another Sunday brunch with Jenna and Margot. Claire had spent half the meal joking about how I was improving. Jenna said men really could be trained if they wanted to be. Margot laughed and said, "Positive reinforcement works." I sat there quietly. I paid the bill again. In the car, Claire said I had been distant at brunch. I said I did not enjoy being discussed like a renovation project. She sighed. She said I was being sensitive. I said I was tired of being evaluated. She said standards are not evaluation. I said they are when one person holds the clipboard. She got quiet. Then she said maybe I was not ready for a high-standard woman. There it was, the final card. If I objected to the system, I was low value. If I questioned the list, I lacked ambition. If I wanted reciprocity, I could not handle standards. I looked at the road ahead and felt something inside me go very still. I said maybe she was right. She looked over at me. She had expected resistance. She had expected me to argue, prove, promise, improve. Instead, I agreed. The rest of the drive was silent. 2 days later, I ended it. Not dramatically, not angrily. I went to her apartment after work. I brought her things in a small bag. She opened the door and smiled like nothing serious could happen. I told her I did not think we should continue. Her smile disappeared. She asked if I was breaking up with her because she had standards. I said no. I said I was breaking up because her standards only went one way. She said that was unfair. I said maybe. She said she had been trying to help me become a better partner. I said I understood. Then I said I no longer wanted to be her project. She cried. Then she got angry. Then she cried again. She said I would regret leaving someone who pushed me to grow. I said maybe I would. I did not. For the first few weeks after the breakup, I felt strange, not heartbroken exactly. More like someone had turned off a machine that had been humming in the background for years. The silence was noticeable. Then it became peaceful. I kept the spreadsheet, not because I missed her, because I had already built it, and because some of the standards were not actually bad. Planning dates is good. Being emotionally present is good. Remembering important things is good. Taking ownership is good. The problem was never effort. The problem was contempt. So I made a quiet decision. I would keep the best parts of what I had learned, but I would never again give that level of effort to someone who treated it like an unpaid debt. About 4 months later, I met Rachel. She was a project manager at a nonprofit that worked with financial literacy programs. We met at a charity event my company sponsored. She was not flashy, she was not trying to dominate the room, but she had this grounded warmth that made conversation easy. We talked for 20 minutes by the coffee table. No performance, no interview, no ideological screening, just two adults talking. She asked what I did. I told her. She made a joke about spreadsheets being astrology for cautious people. I laughed harder than the joke deserved. A week later, I asked her out. I planned the date carefully, not because I was trying to earn approval, because I wanted to. Dinner at a small Italian place, a walk by the river afterward. I remembered she had mentioned liking tiramisu, so I checked the menu ahead of time. The date went well, really well. At the end, she smiled and said, "I can tell you put thought into this. Thank you." That sentence almost broke my brain. Thank you. No correction, no reminder that effort was the minimum. No lecture about how basic consideration should not require praise, just gratitude. Simple, direct, human. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because Rachel was perfect, I barely knew her, but because appreciation felt so different from evaluation. We kept seeing each other slowly, naturally. I planned dates. She planned dates too. I cooked for her. She cooked for me. I remembered her work deadlines. She remembered mine. When I helped her move a heavy bookshelf, she thanked me. When she helped me prep for a difficult family conversation, I thanked her. Nobody kept score, which ironically made both of us give more. That was the part Claire never understood. Gratitude creates generosity. Entitlement kills it. After about 3 months with Rachel, something happened that brought everything full circle. Claire saw us at a restaurant. Of all places, it was the same Italian place where I had taken Rachel on our first date. I was there with Rachel for her birthday. I had reserved a small table near the window. I had brought a simple gift, a first edition of a book she loved. Nothing wildly expensive, just specific. I had called ahead to ask if they could bring tiramisu with a candle after dinner. Rachel was laughing at something I said when I noticed Claire near the entrance. She was with Jenna. Of course she was. Claire saw me. Then she saw Rachel. Then she saw the flowers on the table. Then the wrapped gift. Then the candle being carried toward us by the server. Her face changed in stages: recognition, confusion, irritation, then something close to panic. I looked away first, not out of guilt, out of disinterest. Rachel noticed. She asked if I knew her. I said yes, an ex. Rachel nodded and did not make it a drama, another point in her favor. The server brought the dessert. Rachel smiled at the candle like it was the sweetest thing in the world. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. She said, "You are ridiculously thoughtful." I said, "I try." She said, "I know, I notice." I cannot explain what that did to me. Not in a dramatic way. It was more like some old bruise finally stopped hurting. Across the restaurant, Claire was watching. I did not look directly at her, but I could feel it. Later that night, after I dropped Rachel off, my phone buzzed. Claire. I had not blocked her because we had ended civilly enough. The message said, "So you were capable of doing all those things." I stared at it for a moment. Then another message came. "You just refused to do them for me." That was fascinating, absolutely fascinating, because I had done them for her, repeatedly, documented, categorized, time-stamped. She had just refused to count them. I did not respond. The next morning, she sent a longer message. She said it was hurtful to see me becoming the man she had asked me to be for someone else. She said Rachel was benefiting from the work Claire had done. She said she had built my standards. She said she had taught me how to show up. She said it felt unfair. I read that line 3 times. Unfair. The woman who had treated appreciation like weakness was upset that someone else appreciated what she had dismissed. I almost replied emotionally, then I remembered who I was. I opened the old spreadsheet, the one I had not touched in months. 37 standards, dozens of entries, dates, actions, costs, responses. It was all there. I attached nothing. I sent no screenshots. I did not need to prove the case, not anymore. I wrote one message. "Claire, I did meet your standards. You called them the bare minimum every time I did. Rachel calls them effort. That is the difference." Then I put the phone down. She replied almost immediately. She said I was being cruel. I did not answer. She said I was punishing her. I did not answer. She said if I had just communicated better, things could have been different. I almost laughed at that. Communication had never been the missing piece. Receptiveness had. A week later, Jenna messaged me. That surprised me. She said Claire was devastated. She said seeing me with Rachel had really affected her. She said Claire felt like I had used the breakup as motivation to become the partner she deserved. I replied once. I said, "I was already that partner. She just graded everything as incomplete." Jenna did not respond. I figured that was the end of it. It was not. Claire showed up at my office building 2 Fridays later, not inside, just outside near the coffee shop in the lobby. I saw her through the glass before she saw me. For a second, I considered turning around. Then I decided I was too old to hide from conversations I had already finished. She looked different, tired, less polished. Still beautiful, but the confidence had cracks in it now. She asked if we could talk. I said I had 10 minutes. We sat at a small table near the window. She did not order anything. For once, she did not open with theory, no standards, no frameworks, no discourse. She just said, "I did not realize how much you were doing." I nodded. She said, "I thought if I praised you, you would get complacent." There it was, the whole philosophy in one sentence, withholding appreciation as management strategy. I asked her if that worked. She looked down. She said no. Then she said she saw the birthday dinner. She saw the flowers, the book, the dessert. She said Rachel looked so happy. She said, "I kept thinking that was supposed to be me." I said nothing, because there was nothing kind to say that would also be honest. She asked if I loved Rachel. I said I was not discussing Rachel with her. She flinched. Not because I was harsh, because I had drawn a boundary without turning it into a TED Talk. She said she missed me. I said I was sorry to hear that. She said she missed how steady I was. She missed how thoughtful I was. She missed the way I paid attention. I said, "I know." She looked up sharply. I continued. "I know because I was there when you treated all of that like an entry-level requirement." Her eyes filled with tears. She said she had standards because she was scared of settling. I said there is a difference between not settling and never appreciating. She said she understood that now. I believed her. I really did. But understanding after consequences is not the same as wisdom. Sometimes it is just loss becoming educational. She asked if there was any chance for us. The question hung there between us. A year earlier, I would have felt torn. 6 months earlier, I might have felt vindicated. Sitting there, I felt neither. I felt calm. I told her no. She cried quietly. No scene, no screaming, just silent tears in a coffee shop full of people answering emails. She said Rachel was lucky. I shook my head. I said, no, Rachel is appreciative. That makes me generous. You were dismissive. That made me exhausted. She covered her face. I stood up. I told her I hope she found someone who met her standards. Then I added, and I hope when he does, you notice. That was the last thing I said to her in person. After that, I blocked her number, not because I hated her, because the conversation had ended and I was not interested in attending the post-meeting review. Months passed. Rachel and I kept building something real, not perfect, real. There is a difference. We have disagreements. We have tired days. Sometimes I miss something. Sometimes she does. But when one of us brings effort, the other one sees it. That changes everything. I planned a weekend trip for us in the fall. Cabin, hiking trail, little town with a bakery she wanted to visit. She planned the next one. A coastal trip with a seafood place I had mentioned once in passing. When I thanked her, she smiled and said, "Of course, you matter to me." Simple words, no ideology, no scoreboard, just care. That is when I finally understood the lesson completely. The problem with Claire's minimum standards was not that they were too high. Some of them were reasonable, some were even healthy. The problem was that she treated standards like a throne. She sat above the relationship, issuing requirements downward while calling every completed task the bare minimum. She thought appreciation would lower her value. She thought gratitude would give away power. She thought if she kept raising the bar, I would keep jumping. And for a while I did. Then I stopped jumping for her. Not because I became lazy, not because I could not meet the standards, not because I hated effort. I stopped because effort without appreciation eventually becomes self-harm. Claire built a list of minimum standards because she wanted proof that I was worthy. In the end, I met those standards for someone else. Someone who did not treat them like minimums. Someone who treated them like love. And the funniest part is that it was easy. Not because Rachel demanded less, but because gratitude made me want to give more. That is the thing Claire never understood. A man does not become generous because he is graded harder. He becomes generous where his effort actually lands. Claire wanted a high-standard relationship. Rachel built a mutual one. And that made all the difference. The last thing I ever heard about Claire came through Natalie. Apparently, Claire had posted something online about men becoming better partners only after women leave. I smiled when Natalie told me. Not bitterly. Just with the quiet amusement of someone who had already seen the report. Claire still thought she had trained me. She still thought Rachel got the finished product because Claire had done the work. But the truth was simpler. Claire did not build me. She audited me. Rachel appreciated me. And people do not bloom under audits. They bloom where they are watered. So yes, I met the list, every reasonable part of it. I planned, I listened, I remembered, I led, I showed up. I just stopped doing it for someone who thought love was a performance review, and I have never once regretted that decision.